She had it all: private jets, designer bags, and parties that never ended. For 19-year-old Alina, life was all about luxury. But when her father, a self-made millionaire, realized his daughter was losing touch with reality, he did something no one expected. He sent her to a farm in the middle of nowhere. No Wi-Fi, no shopping malls, just dirt, animals, and silence. She hated it at first, but what happened over the next 30 days would not just change her life. It would reveal the true power of selflessness and humanity in ways money never could. She woke up to the sound of roosters crowing, her body stiff from the old mattress and unfamiliar air. It was only her third day on the farm, and Alina already despised everything about it. The silence was too loud, the chores too messy, and the people too cheerful. She didn't belong here. She was a girl of glass towers, not muddy boots. A girl of Instagram filters, not cowsheds. Alina had grown up in luxury. Her father, a self-made millionaire, had given her the best of everything: designer clothes, private tutors, the latest phones. But somewhere along the way, she lost touch with reality. She'd throw tantrums over the wrong nail color. She couldn't go a day without Wi-Fi. And empathy? That wasn't in her vocabulary. So, when her father sent her to a remote farm to learn life, she felt like she was being punished for being herself. On that morning, still angry and unwilling, she was told to help at the small wooden tea stall near the edge of the property. Mr. Farid might need an extra hand, the farmer's wife had said with a kind smile. Alina rolled her eyes. Help? She had never helped anyone. People helped her, but something about the woman's eyes made it difficult to say no. So she dragged herself to the stall, dreading every step. The tea stall was simple, nothing more than a wooden bench, a kettle on firewood, and a few dented cups. Behind it stood an elderly man, probably in his 70s, his face wrinkled but peaceful. His hands looked rough, his clothes were worn, yet his presence was calm. He smiled warmly at her. "Sit down, you look tired." She didn't answer. She wasn't used to this kind of kindness, especially from someone who had nothing to gain from her. As she sat beside him in silence, a dusty traveler passed by. He looked tired, his clothes torn, shoes falling apart. Without hesitation, Mr. Farid stood up, poured the last of his tea into a cup, and handed it to the man. "Here, have some tea. You look exhausted." The traveler hesitated for a moment, then took the cup with both hands and drank slowly. His eyes welled up as he whispered, "Thank you." Alina just stared. She turned to Mr. Farid. "That was your last cup. Why did you give it to him?" He smiled gently. "Sometimes the soul is thirstier than the body. And kindness is never wasted." She didn't reply, but something inside her shifted. It wasn't guilt. It wasn't confusion. It was something deeper, something unfamiliar. That night, she couldn't sleep. The image of the traveler holding the cup like it was the most valuable thing in the world kept replaying in her mind. She thought about her own life. How many expensive lattes she'd left half-finished. How many meals she'd wasted without a second thought. But here, in this place, someone gave away their only cup of tea without blinking. And that act felt richer than anything she had ever seen. The next morning, she returned to the tea stall on her own. She didn't know why. She just felt pulled toward it. She helped Mr. Farid clean the cups, boil water, and even tried pouring the tea herself. Her hands trembled at first, but he encouraged her. "You'll learn. We all do." Travelers came and went. Some were poor. Some looked lost. Some were just old and tired. And each time, Mr. Farid offered them tea, a smile, a place to sit. And slowly, Alina found herself doing the same. She began to listen to people, to their stories, their pain, their hopes. They were strangers, but each one carried a piece of humanity that felt more real than anything she had experienced in her glamorous world. One afternoon, a barefoot child approached the stall. His face was dirty, his shirt barely holding together. Alina instinctively bent down, wiped his face with a cloth, and handed him a cup of tea. She even gave him the muffin she had packed for herself. The boy looked at her with wide eyes, then smiled. A big, bright, grateful smile that melted something inside her. She sat quietly for a while after that, not saying anything. Later, she asked Mr. Farid, "Don't you ever get tired of giving so much?" He looked at her with a soft expression. "When your kindness becomes someone's hope, you don't get tired. You get fulfilled." She didn't know how to respond. No one had ever said something like that to her before. She had lived in a world where people only gave when they expected something in return. But this was different. This was real. From that day on, her mornings began to change. She didn't complain when the rooster crowed. She didn't mind getting her hands dirty. She found peace in cleaning the stall, comfort in preparing tea, and purpose in serving strangers. One evening, an old man passing through left behind a photograph of his wife and children. Alina ran after him, called out, and returned it to him. He looked at her with tears in his eyes and said, "You have a good heart, my child. May you always keep it open." She stood there, silent, holding back her own tears. She realized something that day. True wealth has nothing to do with money. It lives in moments of compassion, in the courage to give, in the decision to care. Selflessness wasn't about sacrifice, it was about connection. And for the first time in her life, she felt truly connected. To the people, to the place, to herself. And she knew, deep down, that the spoiled city girl who once refused to wake up before noon was gone. She had met her better self. And all it took was a simple cup of tea. The first rain came unexpectedly. Alina stood in the open field, her hands covered in mud, hair tied back, boots sinking slightly into the wet soil. The sky above was a soft gray, the kind that felt like it carried a secret. For the past 2 weeks, she had been helping on the farm, watering plants, feeding goats, carrying baskets of vegetables. She wasn't good at it, not yet. But she no longer complained. She had started to listen, to the wind, to the soil, and most importantly, to the people. There was one woman on the farm named Helen. She was quiet, with tired eyes and gentle hands. Every day, she worked in the small greenhouse, talking to her plants like they were her children. Alina found it odd at first, even funny. But there was a calm in Helen's movements that intrigued her. One afternoon, curiosity won. "Why do you do this every day?" Alina asked, wiping sweat from her forehead. Helen looked up with a smile, her fingers still deep in the earth. "Because these plants feed people. Because something small I do today might help someone tomorrow. And because it keeps my heart from breaking." Alina tilted her head. "From breaking?" Helen gently pulled out a weed. "My son passed away last year. He loved this farm. So I stay. And I grow things he would have wanted to eat." Alina froze. She didn't know what to say. In her world, grief was something people paid therapists to process behind closed doors. But here, in this quiet field, pain was transformed into life. Into tomatoes. Into cucumbers. Into hope. Later that evening, Alina helped Helen carry baskets into the small village market nearby. They didn't speak much, but Alina watched her, the way she smiled at every buyer, the way she gave a little extra to those who didn't have enough. There was no pride in her giving, no drama, just quiet, steady kindness. A small girl came running to the stall, holding a wrinkled dollar in her hand. "I want strawberries for Mama," she said, her voice excited but nervous. Helen handed her the biggest box they had. "But I only have this much," the girl protested, holding out her crumpled money. Helen knelt to her level and whispered, "That's more than enough." The child ran off beaming. Alina stood there, stunned again by something so simple and so pure. That night, she sat under the stars, replaying the moment. That little girl reminded her of herself. Not the version with gold rings and makeup, but the version she once was before money built walls between her and the world. Before life became a race to be seen rather than felt. The next morning, she woke up earlier than usual. She went to Helen and asked, "Can I work with you today again?" The woman nodded without a word, handing her a pair of gloves. They spent the day planting lettuce. It wasn't glamorous. Dirt got into her nails, her knees hurt, her arms were sore. But every time she pushed a seed into the ground, she felt lighter, stronger, less lost. After a long day, Helen invited her to sit by the fire pit behind the barn. It was dark, the sky full of stars. A few other workers sat with them, sharing food, laughter, stories from long ago. Someone handed Alina a warm bowl of soup. She tasted it. It wasn't five-star restaurant food, but somehow it was perfect. That night, she heard a story from a young man named Marcus. He had grown up in foster homes, never knowing what home really meant, until he came to this farm. "This land doesn't judge me," he said. "It doesn't care where I came from. It just gives, and lets me give back." Alina stared at the fire. She had spent her whole life surrounded by people who measured worth in cars, vacations, and followers. But here, worth was measured in kindness, in effort, in quiet love. And it changed her. She began to care more, not just about the farm, but about the people. She started asking them about their days, remembering their stories, sharing hers. She found herself spending more time with Helen in the greenhouse, learning how to gently water roots instead of drowning them, how to speak softly to plants, because even they respond to care. One day, she asked Helen, "Do you think people are like plants?" Helen smiled. "Yes, we all need the right environment to grow. And sometimes, all we really need is someone to believe we can bloom again." That line stayed with her. Alina had always been told what she was: spoiled, selfish, entitled. She began to believe it. But here, no one labeled her. They just gave her space to be someone else. One afternoon, a man arrived at the farm. His clothes were neat, his shoes expensive, his face looked like a mirror. It was her father. He had come to visit, just for a day. He expected to find her furious, messy, perhaps begging to come home. Instead, he found her in the greenhouse, dirt on her face, hands gently placing seeds into a tray. He didn't say anything for a moment. She looked up and smiled. "Want to help me plant these?" He slowly sat down beside her. Together, they planted in silence. After a while, he whispered, "You've changed." Alina didn't look up. "No, I've just found who I was supposed to be." He nodded slowly. That evening, before he left, he handed her a small envelope. "In case you want to come home early." She didn't open it. She just tucked it in her apron. "I think I want to stay longer," she said. And he didn't argue. That night, she joined Helen and Marcus again by the fire. Her father had gone back to his world, but she chose to stay in hers. A world of meaning, of slow, honest work, of people who taught her that selflessness doesn't make you small, it makes you whole. Alina no longer needed luxury to feel rich. She had found something more powerful. She had found the quiet strength of giving. And in that strength, she finally understood what it meant to be truly human. The seasons began to change. What was once the golden warmth of summer slowly turned into the quiet chill of fall. Trees dressed themselves in amber and rust, and the fields carried a different kind of stillness. Alina had now been on the farm for 3 months. 3 months ago, she was someone who couldn't lift a grocery bag without sighing in annoyance. Now she carried water buckets, cleaned out stalls, and helped harvest pumpkins with a quiet pride in her chest. But more than her hands, it was her heart that had transformed. She had seen things here that luxury couldn't buy, like the way an old man named Theo gave half of his paycheck every month to help build a school in a nearby town, despite barely having enough for himself. Or how the young woman, Clara, would spend hours writing letters to sick kids in hospitals she'd never met, just to remind them they were loved. These acts didn't come with applause. No cameras, no followers, just humanity in its purest form. One cold evening, something happened that etched itself into Alina's memory forever. A storm rolled in. Fast. The wind howled like a warning, and the sky turned black before sunset. Everyone rushed to secure the barn, cover the crops, bring the animals in. Alina worked beside them, breath visible in the cold, hands shaking, hair soaked. Then came the lightning. One deafening crack, followed by a fire at the edge of the property. The old wooden cottage where an elderly woman named Ruth lived caught flame. Without thinking, Helen and Marcus ran toward it. Alina stood frozen for half a second. And then, she ran too. By the time they reached the cottage, the flames had begun to crawl across the roof. Ruth was at the front door, trying to save her late husband's paintings stacked in the corner. "Leave them," Helen shouted. But Ruth shook her head. "It's all I have left of him." Alina didn't pause. She darted into the smoke, grabbed the paintings, and shoved them into Ruth's arms. Marcus lifted the old woman and carried her out, just as part of the roof collapsed behind them. They made it out, barely. As they stood outside, soaked, coughing, and covered in ash, Ruth cried softly, not because she lost her home, but because she didn't lose the memories. She looked at Alina with teary eyes. "You didn't have to do that." "I know," Alina said quietly, "but I couldn't just stand there." That moment, surrounded by smoke, mud, fear, and relief, felt more sacred than any award show or party she'd ever been to. Because for the first time in her life, she had risked something for someone else. Not for praise, not for recognition, just because it was the right thing to do. Over the following weeks, the community came together to rebuild Ruth's home. Everyone pitched in, hammering, painting, cooking meals. Alina was there every day. She brought coffee in the mornings, helped clean debris, sanded wood panels until her arms ached. Her father called once during that time. He was hosting a gala in New York. Celebrities, media, the works. He wanted her to fly back just for the night. "It'll be good for you," he said. "People need to see your face again." But she declined. Not because she was angry, because her time, her energy, was now rooted in something far deeper than appearances. She wanted to be there when the last nail went into Ruth's new window frame. She wanted to be the one to help hang her late husband's paintings back on the wall. And she was. The night Ruth moved into her rebuilt cottage, everyone celebrated with warm cider, homemade pie, and music played from an old radio. Alina sat beside Helen, watching Ruth walk through her new door with a smile of peace and gratitude. That night, Marcus said something that stuck with her. "You know," he said, "being human isn't just about what we feel. It's about what we do for others, even when no one's watching." Alina nodded. She finally understood what selflessness really looked like. It wasn't just donating money or reposting causes online. It was showing up. It was running into a burning cottage. It was skipping a gala to hammer in someone else's roof. It was listening to someone's pain without changing the subject. Alina began to realize that real power didn't lie in wealth or influence. It lived in compassion, in empathy, in presence. One afternoon, as she walked through the fields, she saw a little girl picking wildflowers. The same one who had once brought a wrinkled dollar for strawberries. The girl ran up to her and said, "I want to be like you when I grow up." Alina smiled, kneeling to meet her eyes. "You already are. You care about people. That's what matters most." The little girl hugged her tightly and ran off. And in that simple moment, Alina felt more seen, more alive than she ever did in the glittering halls of her past. Winter arrived slowly. Snow blanketed the fields. The work grew tougher, colder, but her heart remained warm. One day, Helen fell sick. Nothing serious, just a flu. But Alina took over her duties without hesitation, watering the greenhouse, sorting herbs, packing the market boxes. She did it all with the same care Helen had taught her. She even added a note inside each box: "Stay warm. You're loved." When Helen returned, she was shocked by how perfect everything was. "You didn't just manage the work," she said. "You honored it." Alina didn't answer. She just hugged her. Her journey had begun as punishment, an attempt to teach her a lesson. But what she received was something far deeper than discipline. She found healing. She found truth. She found the gentle power of humanity. And in that power, selfless, quiet, and enduring, she discovered the version of herself she was always meant to become. One who doesn't just exist, one who gives, and in giving becomes whole.